faithfully conveying value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally with Book Talk. Today, we're diving into the book called Chronicle of a Blood Merchant. If someone spends most of their life enduring hardships, gritting their teeth to overcome obstacles step by step, what meaning do those past sufferings hold for them when they're old? Can they escape the shadow of suffering and face a normal, real life? That's exactly the fate faced by the protagonist in Yu Hua's novel, Chronicle of a Blood Merchant. Yu Hua is arguably one of China's most internationally acclaimed contemporary writers. His novels have been translated into over 20 languages, published globally, and won awards like Italy's Grinzani Cavour Literary Prize and France's Prix Courrier International. In China, Yu Hua is seen as a key figure in avant-garde literature. So-called avant-garde literature was a major literary school in the late 1980s with writers like Yu Hua, Su Tong, Gei Fei, and Ma Yuan. They rebelled against mainstream trends such as root-seeking and scar literature, shifting towards a direct exploration of human nature. Yu Hua's novels, Cries in the Drizzle, To Live, and Chronicle of a Blood Merchant are classic examples of this literary movement. The protagonist of Chronicle of a Blood Merchant is Xu Sanguan, a silk mill worker in a small southern town. He spends decades selling blood to survive family crises, enduring great hardship. When he gets old and tries to sell blood again, no one wants it. Oh, Xu Sanguan's first blood sale? Purely out of curiosity. He worked at a city silk mill and was visiting his grandpa in the countryside that day. He overheard that village strongmen, like Lao Li, sold blood at the city hospital. Men who hadn't sold blood couldn't get wives, as it showed they weren't tough. This sparked his curiosity, and he wanted to try it too. Well, just then, villagers Ah Fang and Zhen Long were heading to sell blood, so Xu Songwang tagged along. During their first hospital trip, they drank water non-stop along the way, bowl after bowl. Ah Feng and Zhenlong, being pros, downed 8 bowls, while Xu Sangwan, a newbie, strained to finish 5 or 6 before giving up. The reason for all that water? Simple: to thin their blood and gain an extra edge when selling. After selling, Ah Feng and Zhenlong took Xu Sangwan to a restaurant, slapped the table, and yelled at the waiter. 1 plate of fried pork liver, 2 ounces of huangju, and warm it up. Xu Sangguan copied them, shouting the same. Ha! Am I eat fried pork liver and drink huangju again? According to Ah Feng and Zhen Long, these things help replenish blood. Xu Sangwan sold blood for the first time and got 35 yuan. He pondered for ages, unsure what to do with the money. Later, he finally figured it out. He wanted to marry a wife. He had his eye on Shu Yulan, a waitress at a city snack shop. But Shu Yulan already had a boyfriend named He Xiaoyang, so Xu Songwan took a roundabout approach. He persuaded Shu Yulan's father for consent and finally married her. Over 9 years of marriage, Shu Yulan gave birth to 3 sons, named Shu Yile, Shu Erle, and Shu Sanlei. As the 3 children grew up, Shu Erle and Shu Sanlei, Wu Sanlei grew to look more and more like Wu Songwan, but only the eldest, Shu Yulei, didn't resemble Shu Sangguan at all. Instead, he looked more like Shu Yulan's ex-boyfriend, Pei Xiaoyang. Rumors started buzzing in the city and finally reached Shu Sangguan. Got it. Under Shu Sangguan's questioning, Shu Yulan admitted she had a relationship with He Xiaoyang before marriage. Shu Sangguan got angry and stopped acknowledging Shu Yilei as his son. Right then, Shu Yilei got into a fight with Fan the blacksmith's son, beating him till he bled and was hospitalized. Fang the blacksmith came to Shu Sangwan's house to demand medical expenses. Shu Sangwan told Shu Yuan that Shu Yilei wasn't his son, so he Xu Young should pay the medical expenses. Etsu Yulan had to go ask He Xiaoyang for the money, but was refused. Fang the blacksmith, unable to get cash, hauled a cart to Xu Sangwan's house and took all their belongings like tables and chairs. Xu Sanguan thought it over and decided to pay for Xu Yilei's mess. With no choice, he sold blood a second time, got 35 yuan, gave it to Fang the blacksmith, and retrieved the cartload of stuff. Xu Sanguan was an ordinary little guy, just a silk mill worker with many flaws, like weakness. During the Cultural Revolution, Shu Yulan was publicly criticized. They needed a prostitute, scapegoat, and used her premarital sex as an excuse. Shu Yulan suffered a lot because of this. Back then, people would stop her on the street to interrogate her, asking her if she had been criticized at home. For something like Shu Yulan's situation, Xu Sanguan could have just paid lip service, but he was cowardly and actually gathered their three sons to criticize her. Xu Sanguan's selfishness is also one of his traits. Yusu Yilei broke Fang the blacksmith's son's head, but Xu Sanguan ignored it. Yusu Yulan had to go find Yi Xiaoyang and got scolded by He Xiaoyang's wife. Someone told Xu Sanguan about this, and his first reaction was to ask if he was scolded. When he heard only Xu Yulan was scolded, he acted like nothing happened. Xu Sanguan also has a strong sense of revenge. There was a colleague at the silk mill named Lin Fenfang, a silk worker who broke her bone in an accident and was resting at home. Xu Sanguan already had feelings for Lin Fenfang, so he went to visit her. During the visit, he actually had a relationship with Lin Fenfang. Afterwards, Xu Sanguan wanted to buy some supplements for Lin Fenfang to nourish her body, so he sold blood again. With the money, he bought 10 jin of pork bones, 5 jin of soybeans, 2 jin of mung beans, and 1 jin of chrysanthemums. Unexpectedly, Lin Fenfeng's husband found out about this and brought the food to Xu Sanguan's house, causing a scene. Xu Yulan, of course, didn't let Xu Sanguan off the hook. She scolded him harshly and confiscated all the remaining money. Xu Sanguan's affair with his colleague Lin Fenfang happened after learning that Su Yuli wasn't his biological son. This largely stemmed from his psychological imbalance, selfishness, weakness, and vengefulness. Xu Sanguan is such an ordinary person, but he also has qualities that transcend mediocrity, even a heroic side. Writer Wang Anyi once said that Chronicle of a Blood Merchant writes about ordinary people, not the usual kind, but those who defy some common human feelings. Xu Sanguan is a man of the mundane world, where ethical norms are his foundation for living, but he was able to break through this constraint. For his non-biological son Xu Yilei, he endured great hardships and sold blood to treat his illness. This can be considered a secular hero. Wang Anye mentioned Xu Sanguan's suffering for Xu Yilei and selling blood to cure him. Before that, there was a turning point when he accepted Xu Yilei, which happened during the 1958 famine. At that time, the whole nation was starving, and Xu Sanguan's family was no exception. Xu Sanguan counted on his fingers that the family had already drunk corn porridge for 57 days. He decided to sell blood so the family could have a full meal. After selling blood, Xu Sanguan took the whole family to a restaurant to eat. Halfway there, he gave Xu Yilei 5 jiao to buy a roasted sweet potato to eat, telling him not to follow to the restaurant for noodles. Xu Sanguan said, "This money today was earned by selling my blood. Not easy at all. This money was traded with my life. If I sold blood just so you could eat noodles, that'd be too cheap." That bastard, He Xiaoyang. Shi Lei obediently took the 5 jiao to buy roasted sweet potato, but the more he thought, the more wronged he felt. A child's grievance is hard to resolve. He ended up sobbing and running away from home. Xu Sanguan and Xu Yuan were frantic, searching everywhere. Eventually, Xu Sanguan found Yilei, carried him eastward while scolding him nonstop. They passed their home through an alley onto the main street. Seeing bright restaurant lights, Yilei cautiously asked, "Dad, are you taking me for noodles?" Yu Sanguan stopped scolding Yilei. Suddenly gentle, he said, "Yes." Xu Sanguan and his son Yile reconciled, a turning point for the entire novel. In the novel, Xu Sanguan sold blood 12 times, 8 times for Xu Yile alone. This blood and sweat way of raising Yile lasted 20 years. In the late 1960s, there was a call for educated youth to go to the countryside for re-education from poor peasants. Both Xu Yile and Xu Early went to the countryside as sent-down youths. Years later, Yile returned to the city, gaunt and sallow. After 10 days at home, he had to go back to the village. That morning, Xu Sangwan saw Yile off to the pier. When they reached the hospital gate, Xu Sangwan told Yile to wait. Soon after, he came out and they went to the pier. At the pier, Xu Sangwan pulled 30 yuan from his pocket and gave it to Yile. Yile was shocked at the amount. Xu Sangwan told him it was from selling blood just moments ago. He told Yile to take it all, share it with Brother Early, and look out for each other. Not long after, Xu Sangwan sold blood 6 times in a row, all to save his son. Xu Yile fell gravely ill in the countryside. Earl carried him back to the city, but the local hospital couldn't treat him. They said to rush to Shanghai or his life was at risk. Xu Sangwan sent Xu Yuan to take Yile to Shanghai immediately, while he stayed to raise money, but borrowing wasn't enough. He then planned a route to sell blood all the way to Shanghai to cover Yale's medical fees. Su Sangwan took a boat to Shanghai, passing 6 counties: Linpu, Baili, Songlin, Huangdian, Krillibao, and Changni. At each stop, he sold blood at local hospitals. The frequency and volume were so extreme that he once collapsed and needed emergency blood transfusions. Enduring immense hardship, Xu Sangwan finally made it to the Shanghai hospital. When he reached Yale's ward and saw 6 occupied beds with 1 empty and no Yale, he burst into loud sobs. Just then, someone called him from behind. Xu Sangwan turned and saw Xu Yulan with Lilei. His son's condition had improved significantly. The hardships Xu Sangwan endured during those 6 blood sales left him physically drained, teetering on the edge of life and death, all for his non-biological son Xu Yilei, exactly as Wang Ani described. Xu Sangwan, such an ordinary man, performed heroic acts that defied common expectations. An ordinary man, Xu Sangwan had many extraordinary behaviors, like when He Xiaoyang was dying after a car accident, his wife heard that only a biological son could save him by calling back his soul. But they only had 2 daughters, so she thought of Xu Yilei. He Xiaoyang's wife came begging to their home. Xu Sangguan was reluctant at first, but his kind nature made him unable to refuse. He gently persuaded Xu Yilei to call back Xu Yong's soul. During Xu Yulan's public criticism, Xu Sangguan brought her lunch. When he lifted the lid, the surface showed only white rice. Street monitors checked and left satisfied. Xu Sangguan whispered to Xu Yulan, "I hid dishes under the rice. No one's watching now. Eat quickly." Xu Yulan dug her spoon through the rice, revealing meat hidden beneath. It was braised pork Xu Sangguan made for her. While countless families broke apart during the Cultural Revolution, Xu Sangguan never considered leaving Xu Yulan. The harsh environment bound Xu Sangguan's survival to selling blood. Chinese tradition deeply values the physical body. As the saying goes, your body, hair, and skin are received from parents. Never damage them. Blood naturally falls under this. In Chronicle of a Blood Merchant, Su Yulan said, "Since childhood, my father told me, the blood in our veins is passed down from ancestors. In life, you can sell fried dough, houses, or land, but never blood. Selling yourself is possible, but selling blood, never. Selling yourself means selling your own self. Selling blood means selling your ancestors." Under such beliefs, selling blood requires courage, not just physical harm, but mental constraints too. But for Xu Sengwan, selling the blood flowing through his body was his only recourse. In the village, selling blood was already common in Xu Sengguan's father's generation, even his grandfather's time. Life's hardships forced them to break traditional beliefs. Once one does it, others follow. People in similar poverty saw that selling blood brought some money and helped them overcome temporary hardships. This was a highly contagious demonstration effect. So, one after another, they sold their own blood. Traditional beliefs became unimportant. The benefit of selling blood to quickly solve financial difficulties was clear to everyone. Working hard in the fields for 1 or 2 months couldn't compare to selling blood once. Um, this temptation was hard for farmers to resist. Selling blood eventually became a custom that everyone discussed lightly in the village, even a matter of pride. Gradually, people's attitudes toward life changed. Mm. In the novel, when Xu Sanguan returned to the village to visit his grandpa, Grandpa talked about selling blood in a very light tone. Grandpa said, "Kid, you often sell blood too." Xu Sanguan shook his head and said, no, I've never sold blood." Grandpa said again, "You don't sell blood, yet you say you're strong. Kid, you're lying to me." If Shu Yilei breaking someone's head and needing to pay medical expenses was a one-off incident that forced Xu Sangguan to sell blood, then the later nationwide famine, where Xu Sangguan's family drank corn porridge for 57 days straight and starved, forcing him to sell blood to survive, that was definitely not accidental. Later on, selling blood for Xu Yele and Xu Erle, who were sent to the countryside, and selling blood 6 times in a row for Xu Yele, who fell gravely ill and was rushed to a Shanghai hospital. All stemmed from unavoidable suffering. Facing hardship, Xu Sangwan initially acted lighthearted, like when Xu Yilei broke Fang the blacksmith's son's head and Fang came to take Xu Sangwan's furniture when he couldn't get the medical expenses. Wu Sangwan even helped move things with a forced smile, pretending to be carefree. But after Fang really took the stuff away, Wu Sangwan started to feel heartbroken, sat down on the doorstep, and sobbed. After that, Xu Sangguan could never be lighthearted again. The family was so poor, they couldn't even afford to invite someone for a meal. And hardships came, one after another. Xu Sangguan trudged forward like an ox pulling a heavy plow in the field. As long as he didn't fall, he had to keep going. However, Xu Sangguan's heroic deeds weren't from any heroic ambition. He just resigned himself to fate, got used to suffering, and slowly enduring hardship became the entirety of his life. This is the attitude of most common people. The daily life of Xu Sangguan is just like that of most ordinary people. They don't know where their suffering comes from. They don't know what life holds besides suffering and fighting it. They've even developed a strange dependence on hardship. There's a phrase called living like ants. Xu Sangguan and others struggling in hunger and cold are as lowly as ants, crawling on the land, unable to see the truth of the times or even life itself. Just like grass growing under a big rock, it survives but never knows what it's like to stand up straight. Ugh. By the 1980s, Xu Sangguan was 60. His 3 sons all worked in the city and had families. The old couple no longer lacked money, were in good health, and lived contentedly. Walking down the street, Xu Sangwan passed that familiar restaurant and smelled fried pork liver inside. He really craved a plate of it with 2 ounces of huangjiu. The desire grew stronger. In his mind, he felt he should sell blood once more before enjoying the pork liver and huangjiu. So he went to the hospital, but the doctor rejected him for being too old. Xu Sangwan left, heartbroken, and cried on the street. Xu Yulan rushed over upon hearing and asked why he was crying. Xu Sangwan said, "I wanted to eat fried pork liver and drink huangju after selling blood." Su Yulan said, "We have money now. We can eat without selling blood." She dragged Xu Sangwan to the restaurant and ordered 3 plates of fried pork liver and over a gin of huangju. Fried pork liver and over a gin of Honju, Xu Sanguan ate. Eating the fried pork liver and drinking Honju, Xu Sanguan smiled and said, "This is the best meal I've ever had in my life." Why did Xu Sangwan cry? Long-term suffering had formed a fixed pattern in Xu Sangwan's mind. When hardship strikes, sell blood. After selling blood, eat fried pork liver and drink huaju. For decades, every family disaster was solved by him selling blood. And each time after selling blood, eating fried pork liver and drinking hanju became his ritual to cope with suffering. In the end, these foods, blood selling and suffering, became inseparable parts of his life. For the first time in his life, he found his blood couldn't be sold. The more he thought, the more wronged he felt. So he cried on the street. This scene might seem comical at first glance, but deep down, it's very tragic. While supporting his family by selling blood, Xu Sanguan affirmed his own value. He equated the value of his blood with his self-worth. Now that he's old and rejected from selling blood, Xu Sanguan saw this as denying his worth. In Xu Sanguan's childlike weeping, we witness how decades of suffering profoundly scar people. One could say suffering is a central theme in Yu Hua's writing. In his literary journey, Chronicle of a Blood Merchant holds pivotal importance, marking Yu Hua's shift from cool to warmth. In Yu Hua's early novels, The Past and the Punishments, and To Live, he also wrote about suffering and death, but those portrayals were detached, devoid of warmth, filled with absurdity. For example, characters in The Past and the Punishments had names like 1, 2, 3 Arabic numerals. Such naming showed characters were like meaningless symbols. In To Live, characters acted illogically, family members killing each other, torturing kin with bizarre methods, till death. Such extreme writing was Yu Hua's literary experimentation. After the 1990s, Yu Hua's writing transformed. He said, "Over time, the anger within me gradually subsided. I began realizing a true writer seeks truth, truth that transcends moral judgment. A writer's mission isn't to vent, accuse, or expose, but to reveal nobility." Thus, Yu Hua shifted from literary experimentation to realism, trading cool for warmth, focusing on ordinary lives and small people. This is embodied in his three novels, Cries in the Drizzle, To Live, and Chronicle of a Blood Merchant, with the latter being his most complete transformation. Its distinctiveness shows in several aspects. First, abandoning grand historical narratives to focus on Xu Sangguan's personal life, using grassroots perspective to show turbulent times through one ordinary man's story. His early novel, 1986, used historical perspective for characters serving historical narratives, while Chronicle centers common people with history receding to background. Second, replacing detached tone with warmth, shifting focus from human evil to uncovering human goodness. Critics said early Yu Hua wrote as if ice flowed through his veins, not blood. Chillingly suffocating, his stories featured carnage, cruelty, magnifying humanity's terrifying dark side. Chronicle of a Blood Merchant moves beyond this. Despite constant suffering, it's warm, highlighting human kindness, even heroism and nobility. Finally, its language is simple and earthy, rich with folk expressions, creating a humorous, comic atmosphere. This differs greatly from Yu Hua's early works. In his early novella, The Past and the Punishments, the night Seven fell ill. He clearly heard Four's sleep talk next door, like a 16-year-old girl, her murmurs like wind blowing across the river. As Seven's condition worsened, Four's sleep talk grew stronger. Compare Chronicle's narration. Xu Sanguan was a silk factory inspector in the city. One day he visited his village grandfather. When old, his eyes dimmed. He called Xu Sanguan close, peered, and asked, "My son, where's your face?" Early Yu Hua was heavily influenced by translated Western fiction. But in Chronicle, he drew vivid folk language, making narration more relatable. Moreover, Xu Sanguan himself came from folk sources. As a child, Yu Hua knew a famous bloodhead at his father's hospital, a blood-selling organizer. Xu Sanguan was modeled after these blood sellers. Yu Hua imagined Xu Sanguan as thin, rustic-looking, with a sly expression. Later, Korean director Ha Jung-woo adapted Chronicle into a film, playing Xu Sanguan, matching this exact image. Though set in Korea, it kept the grassroots perspective and rich folk narrative essence. Through Xu Sangwan, we see how an ordinary person confronts suffering, what agency they retain, what warmth survives misfortune, how hardship shapes them and gains meaning. This revelation of ordinary lives and psychological struggles gives the novel timeless, universal significance. All right, that wraps up our interpretation of Chronicle of a Blood Merchant for you. The reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.